The war between the land and the sea continues with episodes 3 and 4, The Deep and The Witch of the Waterfall, written by Pete McTighe and Russell T Davies. Now, before I get started on this, a couple of things I quickly want to mention or clear up. One, I mentioned that General Austin Pierce, played by Colin McFarlane, in the previous episode. I didn't actually realise. I mentioned that Colin McFarlane had been in Doctor Who previously in Under the Lake and Before the Flood. I didn't actually remember at the time that he also appeared in Torchwood Children of Earth. He was actually playing the same character, just with a slightly lower rank, to which 15 years between that series and this one now makes sense he would become a general. But the other thing I quickly want to mention is that when I was kind of looking up the kind of page for this particular series, I also happened to glance at the composer of the series, and I was honestly surprised. Because the composer for The War Between the Land and the Sea is Lorne Balfe. And Lorne Balfe is a name that I've heard before, and he's done some kind of pretty big films, including the likes of Megamind, Penguins of Madagascar, two of the previous Mission Impossible films, Black Widow, Black Adam, and yeah, he's a big name. And to be honest, I don't know, maybe I was just kind of expecting that Murray Gold did this series, or maybe they brought back Sega Nakanola or the like, but just to see a big name like Lorne Balfe involved in a Doctor Who spin-off, that surprised me. And you know what? I'm always surprised when they manage to get big names in for the Doctor Who universe. Anyway, continuing on from the end of the previous episode, Plastic Apocalypse, Barclay, Pierre Dupont, played once again by Russell Tovey, and General Austin Pierce, played by Colin McFarlane, they and a selection of others are selected to go down into the very depths of the ocean, one of the deepest parts of the ocean, to continue the peace negotiations with the Sea Devils, or Homo Aqua, along with Salt, played by Gugu Mbatha Raw. And most of the first episode, or episode 3, The Deep, kind of focuses on them, along with their team, going down in a diving bell down into the deepest, darkest bits of the ocean. But we also get to see a bit more with Kate Stewart, played once again by Gemma Redgrave. And Kate is kind of being pushed to her limits, not necessarily emotionally, but just physically, as people like Shirley Ann Bingham, played once again by Ruth Madeley, and her love interest, Colonel Christopher Ibrahim, played once again by Alexander Deviant, tell her that she ideally needs to rest. Like, she's going off something like 6 hours of sleep over the past 2 days, and they try to tell her that's not healthy. You need to take a moment to rest, to recharge, to get yourself back in fighting form, even though Kate says that she doesn't really want to do that because she knows that this is a dire situation, and that if she isn't consistently on it, then that could spell disaster. But I can't really talk that much. There's not really too much more to the first episode, The Deep, aside from Kate discovering that the kind of relevant politicians and negotiators are kind of up to no good. But it does also lead to an event known as Severance, to which, when she is in her hotel room or in her apartment, just trying to kind of rest whilst also keeping on top of things, we suddenly see a red dot shining towards her forehead, to which Ibrahim realises at the last minute and shoves her aside. And one thing to mention about this is, after last week's 2 episodes, I did see an article or something online that suggested Kate may not actually survive the full extent of the war between the land and the sea. That they think it was kind of in two minds about it. It was saying either she was going to be killed off, or if she wasn't killed off, they weren't necessarily sure what they were going to do with her now, given that they seem to have exhausted every kind of story possibility for Kate from the main Doctor Who universe. To which I'd like to stop for a minute and just talk about that, because I can understand ultimately if they do decide to kill her off, I'll be sad, but I guess I'll understand. But I really don't want Kate to die, because I like Kate as a character. And they can always do what they did with the Brigadier and the kind of classic era of the show. Like, they had the Brigadier around for a while in the 60s and the 70s, and then, kind of when Unit was phased out, they brought Unit back every so often, but the Brigadier wasn't there. But then they did bring him back on two occasions, once with the Fifth Doctor in Mordrin Undead, and then once with the Seventh Doctor in Battlefield. Like, maybe if you don't know what to do with Kate anymore, maybe you can have her kind of retire or step back from the unit, but bring her back occasionally. You don't have to kill her off. But then that does lead at the end of the Deep to a moment I honestly was not expecting, to which, when I said the kind of laser light you see pointing in, Ibrahim pushes her out of the way and seemingly takes the bullet himself, and I was not expecting that, to be honest. Like, Colonel Chris, even though we've only had like 8 episodes with Colonel Ibrahim, he's a character that I have grown to like, and I'm sure other people have grown to like him too. Like, he hasn't been around that long. I mean, he was only introduced in the 60th anniversary special, The Giggle, and that was only 2 years ago, and we haven't had that many episodes with him, but he's a character that we grew to like. We grew to see him with various other members of the unit, so to see him suddenly shot down, that was heartbreaking, especially seeing Kate's reaction to it. And honestly, that really worked well for me. I mean, as I said, I didn't want him to die, but I wasn't expecting him to be killed off like that. Anyway, the second episode, The Witch of the Waterfall, or the fourth episode actually, The Witch of the Waterfall. Oh, hang on. One other thing I need to mention about the Deep is that when they get down into the depths, they're seemingly about to start the peace negotiations when one of their team reveals an item that he previously said was like a peace offering to them is actually a bomb, which he uses to wipe out a lot of the assembled Sea Devil hordes, with seemingly the only 2 survivors from the situation being Salt and Barclay. And Salt gets Barclay back to the surface, where Barclay is picked up by a unit helicopter and Salt is subsequently captured. That's one thing I need to mention before I go on to The Witch of the Waterfall. At The Witch of the Waterfall, Barclay is kind of taken back to civilization, seemingly continue things. Meanwhile, it's implied that Salt will be taken to Unit HQ, will be killed, dissected and worked out. Meanwhile, the people in charge kind of want to kind of reclaim the seas. However, Barclay initiates a way for him and Salt to escape, and somewhat a romantic interest does start to build between the two when they hide out in a warehouse, and I'm not entirely sure how I feel about those feelings. I kind of preferred it when they were kind of clearly platonic, just 2 people trying to work through situations. And while I know a romantic subplot between the two seems inevitable, I really wasn't sure how I felt about it. Kind of seeing them in kind of romantic gestures, kind of sitting together and a kiss, and I really wasn't sure about that. But anyway. This ultimately boils down to a situation where Barclay wants to find a way to get Salt to safety, to which he suggested that maybe they could go up to North Wales, like he's got a friend up there, to which I briefly thought, hang on, is that friend Alonzo Frame? Maybe that would make work, but anyway. He tries telling her that they can go up to North Wales where there are kind of lakes and waterfalls, and Salt suggests she could become the Witch of the Waterfall. But in order to initiate this, because they know the entire city of London is on lockdown, Barclay comes up with a plan. He calls up his daughter, Kirby Pierre Dupont, played by Kat Gunn, because he knows that she has a secret phone because she's a teenager and she doesn't want her parents interfering with her life. And through there, he tries to arrange it with her to tell her mum, his ex-wife Barbara Pierre Dupont, played by Anne Akagirian, that she would kind of meet up with them in a secret car and she could get them up to wherever they're going. Only for it to reveal that Eunice has got there first, and they plan to use this essentially to trap Salt and to arrest Barclay and Salt when they try and make a break for it. On a bridge in London, Barclay and Salt being confronted not just by kind of military soldiers, unit soldiers, and basically surrounded, nowhere to go. Salt manages to escape by using kind of echolocation or sonic sound wave to kind of trigger everyone. And when Kate finds out that the kind of higher ups were planning to kind of kill or dissect, capture Salt, even she starts to go a little bit rogue, telling her soldiers to kind of face the other soldiers, and it does lead to quite a tense cliffhanger. Now, I was watching this with a family member who had watched the first 2 episodes, but clearly this wasn't their thing, as they said, no, you can tell me what happens later, it's just not gripping me. But so far, I'm interested to see how this is going to end. We only have 1 episode left, the end of the war, which I'm interested to see how that goes. But the war between the land and the sea, I said in the first 2 episodes I was intrigued, and that intrigue has only kind of strengthened more with The Deep and The Witch of the Waterfall. We'll just have to see next week if they can pull off the final episode, the end of the war. Anyway, until then, see ya.